Hey guys, this is Julian, and I wanted to give a little bit of exposition before we begin this interview. Me and Matthew have known each other since 2014, and we've given each other a lot of cool creative tips over the years, and we're both mutually inspired by one another. This interview series is really special to me because it is almost like an anchor to really important key moments in my musical life. The first interview we did was for my track Run, which was a class project I did in high school. It miraculously became somewhat of a hit for me. 500,000 streams on Spotify. We did a music video and everything. My first track to get signed to a label. And that was a really special interview for me because it was very early on. And then the second interview was right before my release of Air, my track with Forts and 28mm from 2021, which was a very special moment for me as well because it is my biggest song to date. It's probably one of my favorite things I've ever worked on. And hopefully today's interview will continue that trend as we talk about my brand new record, Contrast, and the first single, Out Here. So without any further ado, let's hop into the interview.
Boy, that's a very long time ago. Okay, it was like 2009, 2010, when YouTube was in it's the second wave or something, and the whole layout was different and everything. But my friend wanted to learn to DJ, so I made a series on DJing, and then that really took off. So then I decided I would start making other stuff, and then because I did that, it all kind of worked in order, and then I became what I am today.
Oh, man. Well, I think I probably answered the same way back then, but I started making tutorial videos for friends in whatever it was, middle school or high school back then. And one of my tutorials just happened to do really well. And when you're, 15 or 16 and you have a video that gets 10,000 views and you're like, oh man, I should keep doing that. So I made a series on virtual DJ that evolved into Ableton, and then from Ableton into a variety of just a lot of other videos in relation to audio software. And that's kind of where the channel sits right now. I'm less active on the channel these days just because I've kind of pivoted towards more solo artist stuff and that sort of thing, but I still upload on the channel to this day. I got my start just messing around with my dad's personal computer. I had some software for making videos and making music, and I had installed a demo of a DAW that my dad got when he bought like a sound card, and I wrote an album around that DAW with the limitation of I can't save projects. So I wrote like a 5-track album that never saw the light of day. Truthfully, I burned it to like a CDR for some friends of mine. So somewhere out there's a Julian Gray record that's, completely lost to time, but maybe somebody has a CD copy of it. And then I was messing with video, and I had like a VCR and a capture card that I would like import and record like VCR clips into the computer and then mess around with them in either iMovie or Windows Movie Maker, as we all did back in the day. And that branched into a love of YouTube, and then I got into DJing. I started making DJ tutorials on YouTube, and I did that for a long time. I know that the last conversations we've had was when I was really active on YouTube, really pushing that. But I've put YouTube on the back burner recently, mostly because I've been focused on my own music, clients, and my own creative agency. So the YouTube thing kind of blossomed into a lot of people reaching out to me about how do I do this thing, or like, can you do this thing that you've done for yourself on YouTube for me and my brand or whatever. So then it became like an ever-growing list of people that kept reaching out to me, and I decided to convert all of those people into clients of a new business I started a few years ago called Asaka Gray, and that's where I now host all my client stuff. And the client stuff keeps me busy, so I don't do YouTube as much anymore, but I still have love for that point of my life. And I'm still creating content every day.
Started to help out people, and I guess that's kind of what I'm doing now still. Like, I'm more of like I don't know, I like to support other people rather than my own fame. But I mean, at the same time, I do make music as an artist, so I do like to be popular and get views, but it's not the focus of my channel.
I think when anybody starts on YouTube, it's really for um, just being enthusiastic about creating something cool. And as you progress down that path, it becomes more and more about numbers games and growing and trying to create something better than the last. But recently, I mean, I've had so many life changes over the past like 5 years that now I'm growing away from that inevitability of social media numbers and stuff, and I'm trying to really dial in regardless of how things perform. I want to create something that I really love or really care about. Something that's interesting that I'm realizing now, speaking to you again, is when I was starting out, which is around the time we did our first interview, is when I really dove headfirst into like pro music production and pursuing that as a career. Everything seems so fresh and interesting and so mesmerizing from a technical point of view. I'm a very learn as you go kind of person and really enjoy the process kind of person. I love the process of learning. And when I was earlier in my career, like the first interview or even like the second interview to some degree, things were still really fresh to me and still very interesting to do. I'm at a point now where I've mastered the tools really. Like I could DJ blindfolded. I could like probably make motion graphic and After Effects in like 5 minutes. I can do like a track in a few hours. Like, so the real inspiration for me has now become what truly inspires me as a creative person. What is the next pursuit of knowledge that I don't have? What is the next thing that I'm vaguely interested in that I can pursue to a degree where I have some understanding of it? And I've learned a lot about myself in the past few years where I've realized that that's really what I love. I love learning and pursuing things until I have some sort of semblance of an understanding of them, and then moving on to the next thing that I'm interested in. It's kind of a blessing and a curse because it means I do a lot of different things, but I never like stick to one thing ever. But it does make me decent at a lot of different things.
I started as a DJ, and then that evolved into music. And then because I made music, I wanted to make videos to correspond with those. So like I made tutorial videos first, so I learned the editors and stuff. And then I started making music videos, and then that evolved into animation and making animated stuff. And then while I'm doing all this, I need to brand myself, and I need to do like, floaters and stuff on videos. So I started getting into graphics. And then, yeah, I just kind of established this knowledge of a lot of different things at once.
Asaka Gray and even like external client stuff I do for friends and that sort of thing encompasses a lot of different avenues that I've somewhat gained a mastery of over the past decade. Those things include music, obviously, engineering, in the audio world at least, design, video, motion graphics, animation, web design. I would say, like, if you wanted to summarize what I do, it's like anything vaguely creative that utilizes a computer. I'm just really obsessed with digital creation, and I think it's just a reflection of my two biggest interests, computers and art. So that's where I live. I think it was more important to me like 5 years ago to be the head of every single creative decision on my brand. But now I still am very active in everything I do, and I think it ascends from this obsession with learning new digital creative tools. And that falls back again to my obsession with tech and new software. I always just want to learn how to do things, like graphic design, design in general, digital illustration, digital art, music, of course, motion graphics and video stuff. It's all stems from like doing cool creative stuff on a computer and that interest that I had as a child. And it's still used every day. I do design work for my music releases, for my collective Gradient, for my YouTube channel, or maybe even like motion graphics or video or 3D design for song visuals for a live show.
Yeah, it calls back to the previous point I made where you should always follow your creative vision. And I think it's important in that regard to have a vision over everything as an artist, because the world is art, the world is designed. You are taking in the world and you are redistributing it in some remixed way, and that's all art is. It's stealing other things and making them your own. It's a Picasso quote. I think that delegation isn't contradictory of that. I think you can delegate and be a creative director and understand that your vision is like the vision, but you're delegating tasks of that vision to smaller artists, or I shouldn't say smaller artists. I should say other artists that are feeding into the larger vision at hand. A great example is I'm working on this live show for my new album, Contrast, and there are aspects of the project that I probably could learn myself and do like a half as good job at what somebody who is a professional at that thing can do. For example, I work with like 3D graphics artists. There's this one guy named Chris. He goes by HD4884. Incredible 3D artist, one of the most talented I ever met, and I've had the privilege of working with him and a few other 3D artists. There's this guy called Future Twist as well. Kappa Design also does some stuff for my live show in the touch designer world. But these are all specialties that I'm not familiar with. I just know what I'm trying to do, and I can delegate those things to other artists and tell them my vision. And if you find the right creative partners, you can really do something bigger than what you can do yourself. And that maybe is something I've realized in the past few years, more than when I was first starting out.
Started into DJing side, so I was always into like the dance music kind of stuff. But when I started writing music, it clicked for me. I knew I wanted to write it, and I started doing like scores, and I started doing a whole bunch of different types of music. But electronic music has always been like the focus.
I started out when I was young building computers and fixing computers and servicing. I had, parts that I would piece together Windows computers. I would fix up my friends' Macs and stuff. I used to have like a series of old Power Macs I used to play with. But then I think my grandmother got one of the old iMacs, the white ones when they first came out, the first Intel iMac, I think, and it had GarageBand on it. And I started to play with that. And I really discovered, how flexible electronic music could be. Then one day my dad brought home a demo program. He used to work as a guitar teacher, and he bought some sort of like interface or something, and it included a demo of a program. And I wrote an album in like this demo DAW that I had. And between that and like the GarageBand stuff, I really fell in love with electronic music.
I started making electronic music when I was like 11 or 12. That stuff early on was very different sonically to what I do today. But I will say that just like any artist has like a style or like a signature sound, quote unquote, my music has a through line from the earliest stuff, the demos I made when I was 11, to today. And that's generally my sense of melody, my sense of chord writing that was kind of imposed on me from years of classical training and my dad being a session guitarist and my mom being in the industrial new wave scene. I grew up around it. I have these sensibilities that I can't shake even if I try. If I try to write something that sounds not like me, it always ends up sounding like me. So my sound has changed over the years, but it's me.
Run, I was writing the melody about a week before, and I had the bassist down. It's actually in one of my videos. I had a tutorial on drums or something, and you can hear the original instrumental. And I wrote the thing, and then I sent it to Laura, the vocalist on the track, and she wrote the lyrics and the vocal melodies in like 1 or 2 days. And I was blown away. And then she came over, we knocked it out in a few hours, and then I just mixed it and mastered it. And that we have run.
Air was initially a collaboration between me and 28 millimeter. We've been working on music ever since like 2015 or 16 when we first met. Never really landing something that we thought would be appropriate to release, like good enough to release, until maybe like a year ago. He sent me this really cool idea, and a lot of people believe that in Air that the main lead counter melody is me because it sounds like me, and maybe that's why I was so in love with it. But he sent me this idea, and that melody was very prominent in the idea, and I was like, okay, that melody is so good, I have to write on this right now. We have to make this a collaboration. And then 28 millimeter actually for years and years has been collaborating with this artist called Numa. He reached out to her, and she's actually in a band called Forts, and it's her and another writer, and they were so enthusiastic about it, they turned around the song in like a day or two, and the track was perfect with the vocal on it. I think that it really made the record, and that's kind of how it came to be. It's just a lot of mutual friends that we've known over the years. I've known of Numa for years now, and it was so good to finally have her and her other member of Forts on the record.
So I think between our last interview and today, I went through a bit of musical turmoil from 2021 until maybe 2023, like later in the year. And I started to fall for the red flags that everybody tells you to avoid in the music industry, which is chasing a vision of somebody else's that will accelerate your career or help you take the next steps. I was trying to release with labels. I was believing what people were telling me, and that my music isn't where it needs to be or what it needs to sound like. And I really burnt out of writing for Julian Gray middle of last year, 2023. I did some releases last year where I was just kind of going through the paces. And not to say I don't like those songs. I still love the songs. I don't release music that I don't enjoy. But it really felt like I was just kind of churning music out. And it became unfun to release music, and that was a revelation to me. So then about, November of last year, I went with some friends of mine to the desert, and we did like a 7-day writing camp together just for fun. We're all just kind of loosely adjacent to the music industry, and we worked on some really cool music. And there was no expectations. There was no financial restriction. There was no like pressure for it to sound like Julian Gray. And we created really cool music that I was proud of and I felt more aligned with than what I was releasing for myself. And that was a huge revelation for me. And it kind of caused me to pivot the direction of what Julian Gray was and what it was becoming. And for this new album, that's kind of where that started. So I started by going back into the archive of music, of ideas that I had from years ago, like 2018, 2017, where I felt like I was really myself and I was expressing myself in a way that was unrestricted by record labels and management and that sort of thing that were directing me in a certain direction. And it ended up that I had this record I started with Richard Patrick back in 2017. And he had found me through a YouTube tutorial, and it turns out we lived near each other at the time, so we hung out a few times. I was obviously enamored by the fact that he was Richard Patrick of Filter, and I obviously 9 Inch Nails as well. But we started a record back then. I've gone through 2 full albums that I've written to like an 80% and then never finished because I just am very bad at finishing projects. And this record has been on every single one from then until now. And finally, it's coming out because I was like, it's finally time to bring this one to life. And I felt like this was a really good candidate for something that sounds kind of like me circa 2023, but enough of me that's like from the previous era. And I think it was kind of a transcendent experience to resurrect it and bring it back around to life again in 2024. And I had some really awesome opportunities. Like I worked with No Mana, a friend of mine. He assisted with some of the mixing with his company. And me and Richard tried to do some more songwriting on the song. It didn't work out. We actually loved the original core idea so much that we didn't want to change it. And we really modernized it to this new sound. So it truly feels like a collaboration with like an earlier version of myself, which is really exciting for me.
I don't know. I enjoy seeing people enjoy it, but I'm always just like, I'm trying to work on the next project. I'm always trying to work on the next project. So I don't, it's like, I don't like rest there. It's like I release it and then I just start on the next thing.
When I was, however old that was, 18 or 19, I was always in this content grind mindset where I was trying to create as much as possible. And I think that I attribute a lot of my success to that era of just, putting out so much stuff that it's impossible to ignore me. And now I'm inspired more by album artists and artists that release very minimal amount of material, but the material that they do put out has like a world around it. You get caught up in the energy and the aesthetic, for lack of a better word, of the release. I don't care to put out an absurd amount of music like I used to. Like 2017, I put out like 4 EPs or something. It was crazy. I don't do that as much now because I like to really dial in what the single means and like the world around it.
One of the main causes of my burnout in 2023 was that I was constantly on to the next thing. I would finish a single, I would do the marketing for it, I would do like, what it takes in 2023 or 24. The climate was like, you need like 3 reels for TikTok and Instagram. You need like a visualizer for YouTube that could be a music video or motion graphics. You need banners, you need cover art, you need like press photos, you need like a whole rollout. And me being me, I would create everything myself. And in order to be like competitive, quote unquote, in the current climate of music, which I'm not in love with, I miss the iTunes era or like the Beatport era or like the era of ownership of music. Currently, what matters most for an artist, like well-being in terms of like support on tours or like optics from agents or what have you, is your monthly listeners on Spotify. And people might not realize that, but the way you keep your monthly listeners up is by constantly releasing new music. So there's an output that you have to some degree follow. And that's like between like 4 to 6 weeks a record. And obviously you can kind of connect the dots. Doing what I do for every song every 4 weeks on top of like all my client stuff and all of my student stuff and my record label work, which I run myself, is a lot of work. And I burnt out very heavily on Julian Gray because of that. So now I really try to be more cautious with how much I'm taking on. I try to be more selective with the projects that I agree to do, even if it's monetarily beneficial or like hugely career beneficial. I try to relegate my time better to things that I really love to do.
I'm really proud of Run, and I'm proud of the song I did before that with Escape. I don't know if you've heard it. It's called Working Title. And we didn't really push that one very much, but I really enjoy that one. And if I was ever to play a show, I would definitely play it.
I would have to say my unreleased stuff that I'm working on is my proudest work, but I think that's true for any artist. The newest thing and the most exciting thing is always what you're currently working on. But out of all the things I've ever done, I mean, Air obviously is like the most exciting right now because it's what I just put out, and it's what I really love right now. But there's clear like milestones that I've put out that I really love. Like I had a track with the Canadian producer Deza a few years ago called Cold Outside. It's still my biggest single. I think it's like maybe like 3 million streams across platforms. That one I'm really proud of. It was a big record for both of us, and obviously my Mousetrap EPs were a really meaningful one to me when I was a younger producer. And my last year's release of Static. I mean, I have become to this point where I worked so heavily on each release that I'm equally proud of them all.
I think I've said this all 3 times, but my favorite thing is the current thing I'm working on, or like the newest release. Obviously, contrast the new era of Julian Gray is my favorite music. And I really love the new single too. Out Here is great. But that aside, if I had to look back retroactively, there's a handful of records that really mean a lot to me. Air is definitely one of them. Random people off the street will come up to me and compliment me on Air. And that's something that I've never experienced before. So that is a really special one to me. I had one in 2019 with Deza called Cold Outside. And that was huge for me because it was on like the front page of iTunes. We got on all the playlists. We were on Mint. Like the banner on iTunes had my name on it. It was really cool. And that was just a special moment in time for me. And then I would say Paper Planes from my first Mousetrap EP because of how much that record meant to me as a career milestone. Because I was a huge Mousetrap fan. I always wanted to release there. And Deadmau5 co-signing my music was very validating at that point.
My favorite electronic artists, first being Deadmau5. That's, you can probably hear that.
Yeah.
Cascade, Eric Prydz, Porter Robinson, Wolfgang Gartner, Zed, Daft Punk. They got me into the whole DJing thing. I saw a couple of their videos back in like 2007. I was like, dude, I want to do this.
I would have to say, I know that my answer from 2015 was Deadmau5. I would have to put him in my top 10 just because of his residual impact on me. Porter Robinson is a favorite right now. Someone I really fell in love with in like 2016 or 17. Madion is an incredible electronic producer. There are some people in my circle that I really respect from a music perspective. Like Nomana is really cool. In the electronic music space, I actually listen to a lot less electronic music than you would think now. It's evolved a lot into, more alternative stuff, what I listen to now. Coldplay, but not as much. I listen to a lot of them around, their older music, like 2014 and prior.
Yeah.
But I still admire a lot of what they do. I like American football. I like a lot of Radiohead, that sort of alternative music. Honestly, I listen to so much music across the board. The Beatles, Fleetwood Mac are staples in my catalog. It's too broad of a question, but those are some of my favorites.
Currently, I'm really into Casablanca and Alpha 9. I would say if I'm looking back retrospectively at what I enjoyed as a child and got me into it and like my timeless favorites, they're probably Daft Punk, Deadmau5. I would say Coldplay is probably in there, even though they're not fully electronic. They definitely have a hand in it. Probably some Radiohead as well. That's a relatively new one, probably since like 2020. Maybe Skrillex in the electronic scene specifically. If I'm going way back, maybe like Depeche Mode or INXS, where artists my parents listen to around the house. I go through a lot of phases with other music that I listen to. I remember I had a long stint with Bon Iver, American football. Some timeless ones that kind of never change are Fleetwood Mac and the Beatles. I think that all music and all things in the universe can inspire us in ways that, you don't expect. Like, if I listen to a Fleetwood Mac song and there's like a guitar line, maybe I'll try to write something similar to that guitar line. Maybe it's not on a guitar. Maybe it's just the timbre of the guitar. Maybe it's like the melody, and I interpolate it in some way into the relevant genre that I'm doing. And I don't think that's limited to music per se. It's a feeling, really. Like, I could see a piece of art. For example, this whole album's aesthetic was informed by this artist called Ellsworth Kelly. And I was at this art museum in LA called The Broad, and I saw this exhibit on his art, and he uses these colors that in every way are diametrically opposed. Like the contrast is intense, and it's an optical illusion on the eyes. It makes things vibrate. And I thought it was such a fascinating, such a fascinating idea that I had never seen before, that I wanted to leverage that, how I felt from that, and also borrow heavily from the visual aesthetic when conceptualizing this album. So I think that we can pull many things from visual life, from, you know, just walking down the street, from listening to things, even in passing, and utilize that in our art.
I've always been the kind of person who tries to put all their effort into whatever. So everything I do ends up taking a little bit longer, but it's always better quality than if I was to just rush things out the door.
It's interesting because I think I believed in quality over quantity, but I was practicing like quantity over quality just based on, you know, how much I was doing. And maybe I thought that what I was doing was great, but looking back now, I'm like, I could have made these better if I just took more time on them. It's just, you know, a realization you have as you get older. I think time is more valuable. Like taking a step back and trying to figure stuff out is better than trying to just force yourself to figure it out in the moment. But I still definitely believe that quality overrides quantity.
In the front of my mind, quality is always the most important thing. But sometimes my schedule has a way of prioritizing quantity more than I like to admit. And the gap that I took from my last release, which is a record called Ocean, it was like October of last year, and now really opened my eyes to that and forced me to kind of sit back, and it made me appreciate the trueness of quality over quantity, because now I'm thoroughly quality over quantity. And also I have different ambitions. Like I'm not trying to push the music in the way that I once did, and I think that in some ways pushing against that wall makes it less organic and harder to actually break through. Like when you're doing something because you truly love to do it, that's when you actually get through that next barricade.
The biggest for me was Facebook. Like I got into, like when I was 2 or 3 years ago, I had a friend who was in music, and he got kind of put me into this like stream of producers, and then it just continued, and I gained a lot of friends on Facebook and a whole bunch of producer friends that really pushed me and tried to help me learn how to do things that I would have never known how to do.
I feel like such an old guy saying this, but I feel this very much with like Facebook. And I know like the Gen Z kids are like cringing right now. I connect better with people on Facebook and platforms where I can write like a story, not limited to a certain amount of characters or a 15-second video clip. I just feel more in touch with Facebook and that kind of era.
I am definitely like an entrepreneur as well. Like I'm a marketer through and through. My grandma was a production manager at an ad agency, the first female in DC to do that. So she definitely instilled that in me to like reach people and do it right. And marketing is a huge passion of mine. So I'm always like on the forefront of like, if a new social media drops, I'm on it, trying to make some noise, doing something. I would say that the one that has really connected with me the most, and it's something that I think a lot of people can relate to, is Discord. Discord feels more like a friends gathering than it does a social media platform. Because fundamentally it's a communal thing. It's like a Facebook group was in like 2015. And there's something great about that, like peer-to-peer, like I can connect directly with my fan base or like my friends, you know, compared to like I'm relying on the algorithm to feed me what you post as my friend or fan. So I quite like Discord right now. I think that direct to direct to follower, direct to fan marketing is probably the most effective right now because of how deprioritized that model has become in modern social media, where the goal of most social media now is to maximize engagement, whether it's showing your videos to your fans or showing your videos to like 1 million random people or 0 random people because your video isn't like algorithmically viable. So the direct to consumer nature of Discord is really nice, where you can really build a relationship with your friends and fans.
The biggest tip I have is just don't be lazy and just be persistent. Like keep the quality up and make enough content that you keep your fans or whatever satisfied, and you'll just see this growth over time. If you keep on making good content and you keep on doing it on a regular basis, you'll eventually grow your fan base.
Yeah. I would say the most important thing is to really be yourself and create art and content that you really believe in. And I think that people can see when you're doing something that you truly love to do and you're trying to help people and trying to connect people, people will believe that, and then they'll start understanding your vision and what you want to do. If I had to start over from scratch, I would be doing things very similarly to what I'm doing now and what I did in the start, just creating a community around what I do and trying to connect people with similar views and perspectives, just to who all believe in like a common vision or dream. I think that that's like the most important thing. I think don't pay too much attention to like optics and numbers and stuff, because it's a very unhealthy measurement of your value. I think great work and great art speaks for itself, and people will respect that.
I think be intrinsically creative. Create what you want to create. At the bottom of your heart, you're going to create your best work doing that. And you can pay attention to what is quote unquote working on social media. But I think that what will trump any sort of, get rich quick scheme, as it were, is just telling really compelling stories, and not in a literal sense, but like in a metaphorical sense, making something compelling and interesting that's true to your creative vision that people will find interesting and really want to see more of. That's like the fundamentals of growth, I think, right now. So that's my best advice I could give to anybody starting out right now.